Welcome to the Monocle Banking Podcast, all about the trends, challenges and opportunities shaping the financial and banking sectors here in South Africa. I'm your host, Michael Avery, and today we explore Monocle's new tech offering. Well, we've been talking about tech changing banking for what feels like an eternity now. First, the writing was on the wall as the fintechs and the neobanks were expected to come in and storm the castle, but I think the traditional banks were written off far too easily and quickly. Neobanks have certainly struggled because while they've got amazing customer engagement and tech, they might not have the balance sheet to scale revenues, and incumbents have got the scale and they've got the product diversification, but I think we're running on legacy technology for far too long. I think we're now entering an era in which the two converge towards a more digital first model with all the benefits of modern architecture aligned to what the traditional players have, and that's a balance sheet. So joining me is Mark Beringer, who brings over 20 years of experience in banking to the table. He's recently taken on a pivotal role as the head of Monocle Tech, which is a new offering that complements Monocle's consulting expertise with cutting-edge technical capabilities and executional power. I think we could say it's really ramped it up. So in today's episode, we're going to explore Mark's career journey, the evolution of data in banking, and the significant technology challenges that banks, particularly in South Africa, face today and how we're overcoming them. So sit back. I think we're ready for a hard-hitting discussion about the future of banking and the role of tech in transforming this industry. Well, Mark Beringer, thanks so much for joining us. You've really had an impressive 20-year career in banking. Most recently, you were Standard Bank Group's big data platform owner, full-time role since just prior to COVID until just a couple of months ago. But you really started out, I think it was at Script Farm over 20 years ago. So maybe you could just share what initially drew you to the sector and how has your journey evolved over the years to your current role at Monocle Tech?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. First for me to do a podcast, so looking forward to this. Yeah, so my career started almost 22 years ago, where I initially joined a company as a data engineer, but back in those days, they didn't talk about us as data engineers. We were just database developers, and the terminology improved over the years, and we sound much more fancier now than what we were back then. But yeah, it was really all about building databases and moving data around and on old technologies that don't even exist anymore. So, I remember my first role at Script Farm, got employed there to do some database development and worked on tools such as Microsoft Access, and then got introduced into a tool called DTS, Data Transformation Services, which is the equivalent of SSIS in today's modern world in the Microsoft stack. And yes, really just enjoyed the whole data space. I remember seeing DTS, and one of the guys I was working with showed me how the tool worked and how data moves around. And I just thought this was actually quite interesting. I'd really like to delve into this a bit deeper. And then from there, I just never stopped. So did a lot of database development, built data platforms, ETL pipelines, moving data from source to destination. And then from there, my career just moved forward. So moved into a more data warehouse engineering type role where I was building data warehouses in star schemas and Snowflake schemas. And then from there, eventually when I ended up in the finance sector in Royal Bank of Scotland in the UK, that was also still just data engineering and, just growing and learning more and playing around with a whole bunch of different technologies. And then from there, moving over to Standard Bank, where I spent 15 years in various areas, but all data related. So spent a lot of time in treasury and capital management, in the finance space, built a lot of BI solutions, data warehouses, and then from there stepped up into more a leadership role where I was managing teams, platforms, and eventually ended up as the big data platform owner, which was quite a big transition for me, coming from, let's say, 15 years of relational database experience to all of a sudden moving into a big data environment where things were totally different. It took a lot of learning. I spent my first 3 months in that role just learning as much as I can, reading about big data applications and systems, how data is stored, how data is processed using distributed technologies like Spark. And I really grew my knowledge in the big data space. And I think that really helped my career because it brought together the knowledge from the old way of doing things on the relational side with the more newer way of doing things in the big data world, object storage and separating compute from the actual storage. And that just really made a big difference and, helped me grow my career and my knowledge and positioned me well for where I am today at Monocle.
Yeah, doing the fun stuff, all of the big data and machine learning stuff that, become the buzzwords of today. But I think that journey has really seen you develop a keen sense of that evolution and no longer the old days of just COBOL core systems and legacy spaghetti systems. I think banks are largely overcoming some of those issues. Monocle Tech is being introduced, I think, at a very critical time for financial services. And as I said in my introduction, we've been talking for decades in financial services about technology. Why do you think now is the right time for an offering like Monocle Tech?
It's always played a very close role with technology. So all the projects that they've been involved in, and even all the projects that I've worked with Monocle on, has all been around data. And, they've built up key skills, not just on the business side, but on the technical side as well, that can now be leveraged to do actual execution on the technology side. So Monocle is now actually very well set up to do a full end-to-end project, and by providing the consultants that can do the business analysis side of things, but then also consultants that can actually do the work, the detail, so data engineers, software engineers that can jump in on a project and help deliver that project end to end.
When I was chatting to Paul Morley of Nedbank recently, he's of the view that, yes, you're going to have the core systems, many of them still running on COBOL, which is a very stable platform from the 1970s. But increasingly, you see the technology now expanding out and built around that, with some moving off-prem and into the cloud. What do you see as the big trends in the industry at the moment when we look at the way technology is transforming how banks think about the kinds of products and services they can deliver?
The big trends, obviously, AI, Gen AI. Everybody wants to get involved in AI and deliver something in the AI space. But I think although these are top trends, we mustn't necessarily forget about the basics. There's still a lot of work that needs to be put in place and systems that need to be built that actually just focus on the basics. So, there's this term I heard where somebody said, everybody wants AI, but some people don't even get the BI right. So I think, that's where there's a lot of focus as well still. So although we've got trending technologies and concepts like AI and cloud, there's still a lot of work that's required both on-prem and in the cloud to just get the basics right. So that's, moving data around, making sure the data quality is accurate. And I think, that's where we really want to focus and help businesses grow, is by going back to the basics and helping streamline those fundamental principles that need to be put in place to make these trends possible. If you don't have your data in the correct format or at the right accuracy, it's not going to be possible to do these great and fancy Gen AI concepts that are coming up.
Yeah, so you need to understand your big data platforms on-prem, things like Hadoop and others that give you this great business intelligence, and then think about how it interacts, I guess, with things like Azure and your cloud data lakes. Where do you sit down when you start with a client and try and take them back to the beginning and first principles? Where do you like to start off in having this discussion?
The difficulties of where we are right now is the amount of technologies that are available in this landscape. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen that MAD landscape. They call it the MAD, MAD landscape. So it's machine learning, AI, and data. And that basically is a mapping that shows you the key players in the ML, AI, and data landscape and the different options that are available. And the 2024 version that's been made available contains over 2,000 applications and technologies and tools. And I think that's what makes it really difficult right now, is because there are so many options and opinions. There's a lot of sales happening. These vendors are engaging directly with the clients, trying to get their product in, and different vendors at the same client, which makes it difficult because you're getting multiple opinions. So on the one side, somebody wants to use this technology, and on the other side, somebody wants to use that technology. So that's really the tough part. And the focus should be, how do we go back to the basics? How do we not overcomplicate this with multiple technologies and tools, but rely on what we have to get to the endpoint. And it might be tools that we already have, might not be the nice fancy tools that are out there right now, but we already have access to a lot that can do all of this work that's required.
It's fundamental, I think, why you need a partner in this space who can navigate that mad landscape, because there are far too many vendors who are just, as you say, obviously they want to sell you their product, their technology, and are not necessarily 100% aligned with whether or not this technology is the right solution in whatever context you might be coming at it from. So I really think you need to go at this with a partner that understands the ecosystem of all of these technologies. When it comes to the biggest gaps that you see in technology within banks today, where do you see the big gaps, particularly in terms of data, software, and architecture?
I think the gaps are utilizing the full data landscapes that are available. Like I previously mentioned, there are all of these technologies that need to be pieced together to make an end-to-end application work. But I think that the gap is looking for something more simplified that can provide you this end-to-end view where you don't necessarily have to utilize 10 different tools to make something work. And I think that's where software as a service is really coming in handy. It's a complicated environment out there. So if you take, for example, you want to build a modern data platform using cloud provider, there's a lot of technologies that you utilize to make that happen. So we spent some time in Azure building a modern data landscape that involved from Databricks to Azure Data Factory, object storage, moving the data around from one place to another, and it really gets complicated. So I think the gaps are when you can work with a vendor technology company that can basically give you an end-to-end application without having to worry about utilizing multiple tools. And if you look at the big players right now, Databricks, Microsoft Fabric, it seems like they're all moving in that direction, is to really try and simplify their landscape where you don't have multiple tools to work with. You've got one entry point and that provides you everything you need. I think Microsoft Fabric might even have the upper hand at this point in time because they've gone fully software as a service, where someone like Databricks still has a lot of work in the background that needs to happen, spinning up infrastructure as code. That takes a lot of effort and expertise from a team to get that right.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we're seeing this huge explosion at the moment, because there's this convergence of factors. The fact that you see the cost of cloud coming down and the ability not to necessarily have the physical on-prem infrastructure with the big data that we've gathered over the years, and now being able to utilize that in a way where we've seen with these large language models, you can use these to improve customer experience through chatbots and through allowing me as a customer to report a lost card or check balances. You can use it to better credit score. I mean, I've seen some amazing applications for AI. It's still, I think, for many a buzzword though. So when you sit down and you talk through AI with your clients, the fact that it's no longer just a futuristic concept, that it's being used daily in banking, where do you see the biggest potential early on in adopting this technology to create value, to show that it can actually improve risk management, credit scoring? Where would you start?
It is a massive hype, and I think that the use cases are still limited at this point in time. The difficulty with these LLMs is integrating it with organizational data, and being able to deploy those models. So we're busy working with some of our clients where we are actually building applications which is utilizing LLMs, and it's to enhance their daily reporting capabilities, to make their lives simpler, to add productivity to the entire process of putting in a report together at the end. So it's really, I think, the value that can come with LLMs and Gen AI and implementing these tools is productivity, taking the unnecessary or time-consuming work that keeps people in these big financial organizations very busy and giving them more free time to focus on proper data analytics and producing valuable outputs that can be used. A lot of time and effort is spent by individuals trying to cipher through loads and loads of data and put together value out of that. But these tools are really making that simpler for us. It's not perfect. And in some of our use cases, we've proven that as well, that, even though we can simplify a process, we need more data and more accurate models to improve the accuracy of the data. And I think that's going to come with time.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I'm hearing you say there, I see applications to improve productivity in the back end initially more than maybe in the customer facing area. So if I'm a banker analyzing and summarizing large documents, employee benefits contracts, supplier terms and conditions, that kind of thing, I can really start using this immediately to see huge productivity gains. On the other side, we've got the cloud, and it's, I think, another area that offers immense opportunities, but it does bring concern about compliance and security, and to a large extent cost as well. How do you envision banks embracing cloud solutions while mitigating some of those risks, particularly in the South African context?
It's complicated, I think it's sold as something that's very easy to implement. But, talking out of experience, both on two different cloud providers, it's a complex environment. You have to understand a lot of different services in these cloud providers. You have to keep a very close eye on cloud costs. And depending on the service you choose, you need to have the right expertise in your team. And I spoke earlier about infrastructure as code, and that's really quite a big thing to get right. Networking, security. If you don't get that right, you could be in big trouble. So cloud really comes with a lot of effort. So, I've recently seen quite a few trends where, companies are saying, cloud is not the be all and end all, and they're reverting back to on-premise.
Yeah.
But I think if you do it right and you really focus on managing your infrastructure properly, keeping your cloud costs close eye on that, then it can be successful. But if you really just give it openly to your tech teams and say, go and build us a solution, you could quickly get into trouble and, rake up a huge cloud bill. That's something that's also, I think, is a big trend right now, is FinOps on the cloud. Now, how do you get everybody to keep a close eye on cloud costs? So even your developers, everybody should be aware of FinOps and keep that in mind. When I'm building something in the cloud, am I choosing the right services? Am I optimizing this to reduce my costs? Otherwise, that's going to be the turning point where the budgets are going to blow and we're going to have to redivert everything from cloud back to on-prem.
And that's the thing, you need to socialize that within your teams, that, cloud resources are generally based on the amount of compute, storage and network resources used and the length of time they're used. So if developers are just out there thinking that this is a free-for-all in a sandbox, those costs can run out of hand quite quickly. And back to what Paul Morley at Nedbank was telling me, he said, listen, let's get one thing straight here. We weren't doing this because it was a cheaper option. We're doing it because it offered us the agility to really go in and develop and design some pretty cool products quickly. But we have had issues, and that's had to be managed quite carefully. It also comes back down to maturity as well. Where would you say we are on the kind of digital maturity spectrum in South Africa with these technologies?
I've got mixed views on that. I think there are some organizations that are much further ahead than others. I think it's the organizations that have a lot of legacy where it becomes more difficult because you have to maintain what you've built previously on-prem, and now you need to build something brand new, say for example in the cloud, and you need to manage both of those environments before you can switch one off. But then other organizations who started fresh directly on the cloud, they're actually making great progress, and they've got access to those tools and capabilities that you mentioned earlier that are freely available on cloud with little effort to get access to it. If you started more recently and you don't have that legacy, then I think you're really on a good trajectory to leverage all of these capabilities that are provided to us. But yes, like I mentioned, it's difficult to maintain both of these environments. So, there's that saying where we're busy flying the plane and we're trying to rebuild it as well. And that's what really makes it difficult.
But that's the thing. On the other side of it, technology is moving so quickly. The opportunities are there, but you're at risk if you don't start moving and moving with the pace of change, because we see more and more opportunities arising on a daily basis. So if you're not doing it, you fall behind. So you've got to get moving, but you're doing this at a time where we're building the plane, as you say, with skills as a challenge, because South Africa, I think like many countries, faces a skills gap in the technology sector. I was reading a very interesting article in The Economist on a flight down to Cape Town recently saying that while we're still looking for big use cases from an industry or sector or profession perspective, coding and DevOps is really benefiting from the likes of these new LLMs that are particularly adept at coding. So what do you see as the key technical and strategic skills the banking industry needs to thrive in this new era?
what's lacking is the fundamentals of technology, software engineering, data engineering. With all of these new technologies that have become available and how easy it is to get about the basics and the foundational principles. And when I talk about the basics of data, how is data stored? What is a relational database? What is an index? What happens when you create an index? How is that data stored or changed? And we kind of miss that in the new age. We focus too much on the trends. We forget about the foundational principles. So I think that's something that we really need to focus on again, is to get people upskilled on the basics and how a technology actually works. Because the better you understand, the better it enables you to actually utilize that technology to its fullest.
Absolutely. I often think of, the data scientists very simply as the librarians of this new world, where we all say that information is the new oil. In God we trust, everyone else bring data. But it's those librarians that help us catalog, tag, manage, clean, and organize that data so it is actually useful. There's no use walking into a room where we just see not even books scattered on the floor, just pages from different books scattered all over the place. No one would be able to make any use of that. If you're an individual, if you're looking to future-proof your career in the banking and the tech space, what areas of expertise would you advise a graduate now to focus on if they want to build on their competencies and maybe come and join the Monocle Tech team?
If we focus specifically on data engineering, to me, it would really be going back to the basics, putting in the effort to understand the fundamentals of the technologies that we are using, and really growing yourself around how these technologies actually work. Like I mentioned, databases. How do databases actually work? How is data stored? Object storage. What is partitioning? How do you optimize queries? And really get to grips with the fundamentals. And once you have these fundamentals, it really enables you to operate across multiple technologies. So when I say it again, don't necessarily just jump onto the fancy technologies that are trending right now. Go back to the basics. Once you understand the basics, then you can operate on these trending technologies, and it will actually for you to transition between multiple technologies. And that's kind of our service offering at Monocle, is that's what we put our people through, the training. So we go back to the basics, the fundamentals. We've got different learning paths for software engineering, data engineering, and those include various concepts from the basics to more advanced concepts, and even things like DevOps and FinOps. We're embedding that into every single person who's doing work on the ground. And that's what's going to set somebody up to have an ability to work with Monocle, is the curiosity, the eagerness, and the proactiveness to wanting to know how technology actually works, getting to the grips with it, and then moving on to the training technologies that we can implement at our clients.
Right. More broadly, and just maybe as a final question, how will this new offering of Monocle Tech work alongside Monocle's existing offering of consulting to banks and financial service firms?
I think bringing those two together is really going to set Monocle apart. Monocle has a very strong reputation of playing a big role in the financial industry, providing management consultants that really understand the banking environment, and coupling that with people who really understand technology, offers a nice end-to-end offering. So, being able to work on a project where we can not just unpack the project, fully understand the requirement, build the solution architecture, and then implement that architecture is now something that really is going to add a lot of value. So it's bringing this whole end-to-end pathway together so that we can add value from the start of a project right to delivering it and putting it into production and supporting and maintaining it as well.
Well, from where I sit, often technology firms are the doers and the consultants can advise, often don't know how to execute. So in effect, what you're doing is marrying both. And I think that is what's going to differentiate you in a market where you're now marrying the strategic business banking skills with, what is that strategic problem I'm trying to solve with the technology behind it and execution to say, right, well, this is how we do it. Because very often you struggle to get those skills in one institution or even one individual. So, Mark, it's really an exciting announcement, this announcement of Monocle Tech, and I look forward to watching how you continue to grow and position yourself and to how you shape the industry from here. Been a great pleasure sharing your insights here on the Monocle Banking Podcast. Take care.
great having a chat.
Well, be sure to subscribe for more insightful discussions on the latest trends in banking and financial services. Until next time, I'm Michael Avery. Thanks for listening.